Welcome back to another episode of The Doctor's In. I'm your doctor, C.G. Weinberg, and today my prescription for you is going old school. This might be the most influential book of the Greek at all time. Yeah. I mean, the Bible is the most influential book. This might be the biggest book. This is the biggest book in philosophy. It's a massively influential book in politics, in life, social order, education. Let's just say you either think like this book or you think the inverse of this book and you don't even know it. Or if you do, congratulations, you know it. You read it. But the book I am referring to is none other than Plato's Republic. Old book. Everyone in their life needs to read this to understand the world you live in. At least if you live anywhere influenced by the West. So in America, you must read this book to understand the world you live in. Because again, like I said, you either think like this or the opposite of this. And there really isn't an in-between. That's just the reality of it. Today though, I'm only going to go over one small part of this book. It's probably the most famous part of this book. It is the most misunderstood part of this book, probably. And that is none other than the allegory of the cave. Now, I'm not going to read it to you from the book because it's like 4 pages long. And, I mean, it's a little bit clunky because it's in dialogue form. So, Socrates and Glaucon are going back and forth, talking through these things. So, in this version, it's on page 240. If you ever want to go look it up, you can Google it too. So, the allegory of the cave. Hyper important to understand Platonism and how it changes into Neoplatonic thought in like 400 years from this book. 500. Because this is written right around 350 BC. Plotinus wrote his book, The Six Aeneids, around 200 AD. And Plotinus would be the Neoplatonic version of this. So, the cave, what is it? So, it's an allegory that Socrates sets up. So he starts with the fact that, let's say, people in their youth are strapped to look at a wall in a cave. They can't move, chained to a wall, stuck, looking forward. And this is their whole world in existence, is looking forward to a cave wall. And behind them, way in the distance, is a fire. And between the fire and them, there's a road with a small wall that things are passing by. People, animals, bikes, chairs, whatever, are passing by and shining their shadow on the world in front of them. On the wall in front of them, wall in front of them. And this is their world, is a world of shadows. And they think it is completely real. And this is the vast majority of society, is seeing these shadows. And they're content with this, and they go on, and this is what they know. The shadows of the things behind them from the fire. But one lucky person, the philosopher, breaks his chains and gets free. And what does he do? But he goes and looks behind him. Turns around and sees the shapes. The things that are moving are not the shadows, but there's something real behind them. And he sees the fire and it hurts his eyes. And he says, what is this? And then beyond the fire, he sees another light. And he goes and gets out of the cave and realizes that there's this giant sun out there. And the sun is responsible for the seasons and the weather and everything. And the whole world that he knows is a lie. And he loves it out there. He loves what's outside the cave. And so what does he do? He knows how the real world works. And so he goes back into the cave and he goes to his other friends who are chained and he tells them about this giant thing in the sky of the sun. And that the shadows on the wall aren't real. There's something else out there. There's something more true, something more real, something more good than the shadows on the wall. And Socrates says, how do you think they respond? Well, the philosopher is crazy and psycho and probably should be killed. So what does the philosopher do? Well, actually, he keeps silent for all that he knows and merely shows them snippets of what he knows, and brings them along bit by bit so that they too can figure out and know the world piece by piece, until the point where they're ready to be unchained themselves, to turn and see the fire, to see reality, to go out and see the sun. But it's bit by bit, it's not all at once. So why the allegory of the cave? And it's a few different facets. First off, the fact that what we know of the world is not real. There are ideals above that are the more true things that we must come to realize. Also, that we can enlighten people through education. The philosopher must come back down and educate his fellow man, and bit by bit, so as not to freak him out, to know how the world actually works. And also hierarchy, that the philosopher should be the one ruling the world. Because they know how the world works, they should be the one making decisions. This gets into his threefold understanding of the world, which I'll go into later, of the husbandman, the soldier, and the philosopher king, the philosopher's guardians. And that's how Plato sees, Socrates sees the world being made up. But the analogy of the cave is hyper important to realize how the world is set up with the Platonic forms. And honestly, the forms are too complicated to get into this quickly. I'd like this to be a snippet. So, the allegory of the cave is the fact that we know nothing about how the world works, except through true education, and our job is to go be educated on what the world actually is, so that we can pass that along to people after us. Education is what saves us. We must educate ourselves to pass that along. So keep learning, understanding the world, and progressing forward. And don't be surprised if people think you're insane. How does Socrates die? He gets told he's perverting the youth and teaching a new deity, so he's claimed to be an atheist. He's a little bit of a whack job. He does say he has a demon on his shoulder telling him things, so that there's that whole thing involved. But he ends up having to be sentenced to commit suicide, drinks the hemlock, takes 2 doses because he's so stout and sturdy. So he does predict his own death here. The fact that the philosopher is killed because they don't understand. So that whole thing is going on here as well. But for worldview, you must understand this whole thing and how it influenced the world. So the allegory of the cave. How does it influence the world? Well, Augustine really agreed with this. The medievalists totally agree with all this. So this whole thing does impact the way you see the world. That the world you see today is not real. You're going towards something else, something better. So your job is to go and learn about it. That's the whole point of the allegory of the cave, is what is in front of you isn't true. So go and find the true thing. Go find the true, good, and beautiful that is out there, that is waiting to be discovered by someone potentially as wise as you. There's some faults in here. I don't believe the world is fake. I do think the world is now. I see the world as a blend between Plato and Aristotle, because I think that's how God created it. When God created the world, he called it good. So I reject Platonism, because Platonism says that the world here is not good. We must go to the ideal. But God called it good. So Plato is a dualist. I am not. This world is good. The spirit world is also good. We are a body and a soul, not one without the other, we are not a soul with a body or a body with a soul. We are body and soul. Lewis was a Christian Platonist. That is a problem of his. I reject Christian Platonism because God created the world good and created my soul good. They are together good. And that is how the world should be seen. So I do reject the philosophy of the cave, the allegory of the cave. I reject Platonic thought, but you must understand it in order to reject it, which is why I teach it, is because The world is good and should be enjoyed, but it's not just physical, it is spiritual. So a Christian must understand these differences. We are not just here to evangelize, we are also here to make the world better, to take dominion. Genesis 3. That is what we're supposed to be doing here on the world, is taking dominion and making disciples. Both and. Physical, spiritual. Dominion, disciples. That is the role of man and Christian. So, if you are human and saved, you have your marching orders. Take dominion and make disciples. Physical, spiritual, together. We are not rejecting the physical for the spiritual. We don't reject the spiritual for the physical. They are both vitally important. So act like it. Care for the world. Care for your neighbor. Go forth and do likewise. That's my prescription for you today, is to love both. Because God loves both. So, like this if you agree. Comment below if you don't. Tell me why I'm wrong. Share this with someone to make them think more. And subscribe if you want to hear about the rest of these videos when they come out. And with that, the doctor is out.